Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video, and today we will take a look into the Sorcerer Kingdom after volume 14, especially into how much it has grown and changed the political landscape since the 9th volume. And I also already made a full video speculating about how Nezarec might use the newfound territory. Link in the description. But before we dive into all of this, let me say thank you to my Patreons for supporting this channel. Now, in order to give you a general understanding on how much the Sorcerer Kingdom had grown during its founding, and the various intrigues, conquests, and alliances, let's look at the map before the massacre of the Cuts Plain. You see the kingdom extending far beyond the Shielding Mountains to the east and south, but all of this changed when the Empire began to attack. In order to facilitate the annual wars and to cut down on the cost of logistic and supply, they built up a strong fort just outside of the Cuts Plain, and even already made an effort to continuously cull the spawning undead. The erection of this fortress also illustrated the impotence of the kingdom, since it undertook no measures to halt this intrusion. But then everything changed again when the Sorcerer King attacked and unleashed eldritch horrors in the form of the Dark Young onto the kingdom's army. After this massacre, Riestais quickly ceded Irantel and the surrounding lands. So this is the Sorcerer Kingdom after the 9th volume. It also had incorporated the Forest of Top, now tamed by Aura and Mare, and the Lizardman population ruled by Cocytus, as well as the Toadmans of the neighboring lake. During the 10th volume, the Empire of Baharut would become a vassal state of the Sorcerer Kingdom, thanks to Ainz brilliant display of obliviousness, which was misinterpreted as an incredible cunning political move by Emperor Jerknev, which, let's be honest, also basically is the entire plot of Overlord. After the vassalization process was completed by Albedo, the Sorcerer Kingdom now had access to the sea and new markets. Because where Fluda Paradane failed, the minions of the Sorcerer King would succeed, and they would sell undead labor to the Empire, as well as reforming and refining the governmental, military, and legal structure, so the entire Empire was still formally controlled via Jerknev. After the 11th volume and after Ainz' diplomatic mission had succeeded, and the Dwarven Kingdom, or rather the last city of the Dwarven Kingdom, and the Regency Council has been saved from the Quagoa, and by extent the Frost Dragons, the nation became a close ally and trading partner. The knowledge of runecraft as well as ores were traded for food and undead labor. And with skeletons working in the mines, without break or sleep, the Dwarven Kingdom itself could now focus themselves on reconstruction. After that, the Frost Giants, enemies of the Frost Dragons, were also conquered by Nezarec, and made to build and polish a statue of His Majesty Ainz Ooal, while the now subjugated dragons would serve as an airline. And after the closure of the 13th volume, the northern half of the Holy Kingdom also became an ally of the Sorcerer Kingdom, as well as a puppet state, with a fake king at its top, and with Nea's influence ever expanding and pages growing ever shorter, the Holy Kingdom might soon fall off screen and be fully controlled by the Sorcerer Kingdom. Also the Beastmen, too much Warhammer. Also the demi-humans of the Abelian Hills had been taken over in the process, making the region into an exclave of the Sorcerer Kingdom, at least for a time. And at the end of the 14th volume, the Sorcerer Kingdom finally had taken over the rest of Riestais, after the death of 8 of the 9 million inhabitants, with only Marquis Raven and the area around Elibera remaining untouched by war and the vengeful undead. The Sorcerer Kingdom now finds itself in the possession of vast quantities of scarcely populated, fertile farmland, and now has its very own access to the seas. And this right here is the very map of the Sorcerer Kingdom after volume 14. I kept the borders between the states when they became vassals, puppets, or allies, and removed them where it is just the Sorcerer Kingdom's own territory, directly controlled by them. Now, with everything in place, let's think about it, what all of this means. First and foremost, the Sorcerer Kingdom transformed from a city-state to an actual country, with a great amount of territory. And it not only inherited the kingdom's entire land, but also added the previously hostile forested areas, such as Top, the Lizardmen, the Ice Giants, and the demi-human territories of Abelian, to its own core lands. making it now a fair bit bigger than Riestais used to be. And second of all, it now has very favorable geography. The bulk of its land is now shielded by natural barriers, such as oceans or mountain chains, and the sheer size of it now cuts the map of the known world in half, isolating two potential strong dangers from one another, namely the Arkland Council State and the Slain Theocracy. Each has its very own means to damage the Sorcerer Kingdom, be it wild magic or a world item. But the far more important thing to note is that while both countries could potentially ally with another, they are hating each other with quite the passion. In the Slain Theocracy, non-humans are so despised that the populace themselves would likely initiate a war with the Arkland Council State if they had a direct border with them, while Platinum Dragonlord, the strongest of the Dragon Councilors and creator of the Council State itself, isn't particularly fond of the state worshipping 6 Yggdrasil players as deities. But even if they would ally and launch a two-front war, trying to trap the Sorcerer Kingdom in a pincer maneuver, it is unlikely that this would succeed. And the reason for this is the sheer distance. While the Dragonlords can fly and teleport, and the Black Scripture presumably also can teleport and fly, the main bulk of the military would still need to take the land route in order to attack Irantel, and this right here is the problem. While Irantel directly borders the Slain Theocracy, the entire mainland of the former Kingdom of Riestais and 2 mountain chains are separating it, and by extent also the Great Tomb of Nezarick, from the Arkland Council State, meaning that the Dragonlord troops would have to cross it in order to aid their unlikely allies. And with the recent war behind them, the Sorcerer Kingdom's troops are very familiar with the territory, and therefore it is very likely that the Arkland troops will be ambushed or halted before they could join up with the forces of the Theocracy. It also has to be noted that allied military aid from the Dwarf Nation, the Northern Holy Kingdom, and the Empire could be used to occupy the Arkland Council State long enough for the main forces of Nezarick to turn the Theocracy into a land of ash and ruin. Another strategy could be to trap the Arkland troops by using Irantel and the mountain chains in the south and east as an anvil, while the forces of the Empire, the Dwarves, the Lizardmen, the Toadmen, the Holy Kingdom, and the Demihumans of Abelion ram into the rear of the Arkland troops. And since Irantel is not only a decoy capital, it also could be held with relatively few troops, and therefore the bulk of Nezarick's forces could occupy the Arkland Council State in a brilliant maneuver of bait and switch. Additionally, Irantel itself could be used to lure in the Theocracy and the Arkland Council State all together, in order to have them both besiege the city and try to breach the Triple Curtain walls. And while they are in the midst of attacking, Nezarick and the subordinate states could capitalize on the situation while the enemy armies are incredibly vulnerable. I personally named this the stuck-in-wall tactic. Last but not least, with the Dragon Kingdom supporting the declaration of war against Riestais, they too will perhaps join Ainz, and thus the kingdom will act as a breakwater between the capital and invasions from the east, where Platinum Dragonlord is supposedly at his strongest. I also want to highlight 2 things. First and foremost, the Cuts plane can still be used to raise armies of the dead, and while it hardly is enough to stop the Theocracy's zealots, they at least could raid the supply lines, or slow them down. And secondly, the kingdom has currently quite a bit of uninhabited land, so everybody from the Elven Kingdom, the Arkland Council State, the Theocracy, or the Dragon Kingdom could be given a place to live, if things turn sour in their home country. And finally, the simple switch between the old map before the Sorcerer Kingdom and after the Sorcerer Kingdom shows how far Ainz has come. Only a few places are left to conquer. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Adam J, Al Capone, Andy, Angel of Death, Bad Guy Yee, Boyzilla, Chrissy, Diabetic Centaur, Dystopia, Elika Birchleaf, Phalis Catus, Feral Shivan, Gigafight, Ghost of Epicness, Hector Marino, Black Phoenix Emperor, Hoss, Jason, Kleinator, Chromius, Large, Lord Touch Me, Lord Ulbert Olaine Oddle, Luces Ollie, Lexus Fox, Majima, Matt C, Marcos, Mr. Shoes, Mindless Rev, Minnow 13, Mirtis, Nferias Potion, Primus 11, Sasuga Ainz-sama, Sebastian, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Search, Sparkly Unicorn, the Orc Warboss Rock Ed Smasher, Vash Hawkeye, Zoggo Bane of Elot, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, over and out.